Well, after 30 years, a Cummins swap, and wheeling on 42s, my OEM birf has finally failed. So this is all that's left of the passenger side birfield, all 6 of the ball bearings, the cage, and this little star spindle right here. Exploded when I was on the trail. I had thought that I had broken an axle. I think I might have broken an axle. Nope, I didn't. What was that loud pop though? It had to have been a rock. And then quickly dismissed it, but I indeed did break one. And the reason I didn't know was because the 80 series transfer case, at least in US models, has a center differential lock, and I forgot to actually disengage it on the way home. So I was able to drive pretty much the whole way without noticing anything until I got home, took it off, and then realized I had no drive. So I suspected maybe a worn spindle or something like that. But then after jacking up the tire, I realized very quickly that this wheel had no drive to it. So unfortunately, there's quite a bit of scoring here. Luckily, the inner seal is not damaged, but there's some galling for sure. I don't think anything will sacrifice integrity as far as driving this, but obviously not ideal. When you do break an axle, you want to take this whole spindle off and remove it so that the axle doesn't flop around like this one did. So like I said, these are extremely tough, and the cool thing about 80 series is that you can drive these home with a broken axle like I did. But yeah, we're gonna get this new one put in here. Now, luckily for me, I was able to pick up this outer portion of the axle or the birfield joint itself for around $320 from Cruiser Outfitters. And this is going to basically just solve my issue because we have a good cage in here, and this is a chromoly axle. So this is a lot stronger than the OEM one, but they do wear prematurely comparatively. I'm not really worried about that because the OEM birfields cost a lot more. So this will just be a temporary fix, and eventually we'll be going to 1 ton. So $320 to get this thing back on the road isn't that much of an issue. What I also like about these is that they have a zerk on the outside. It's gun drilled, so you can just squeeze this full of moly grease, which is really how I would prefer getting grease in there so you can pack it from the inside out. So we're gonna do that before we start reinstallation. I was real close to just buying a whole new set of axles, but the inner axle is fine, so I'm just going to run this one for sake of cost. So I've already had the pleasure of rebuilding this front knuckle twice now in the last few months, but I didn't want to bore you with all the details since I've already done a video on that. If you want to see that video, I'll put it in the link in the description. But the point is, it's done, it's buckled up. Of course, this is the passenger side, I did the driver's side. But luckily, everything works as it should. So this will be basically just a Band-Aid fix for now. I still have stock inner axles, but they're 30-year-old axles from Toyota, and they're still holding up. Like I showed you, the splines are still in good shape. So luckily, it was only a $300 fix in breaking an axle. And the funny thing is, I didn't even know that it was actually broken until I got home and pushed the center differential lock, turning it off because I had even forgotten that I had it on. So a couple other battle wounds I want to show you from compressor going up that waterfall. So on the passenger side here, and as I expected, we've gotten into our intercooler piping with these ridiculously sized tires and caused a little bend right here. So that's going to cause a little bit of restriction from the turbo. This is the turbo side, but not too worried about that. The bigger issue is that our front drive shaft has gotten into the oil pan. This is about as close as I want to even run this thing. So I got a new oil pan on the way, and I've since removed the drive shaft. The issue is this drive shaft was built custom and uses larger joints here at the pinion flange. And when it's articulating off-roading, it just gets a little too close to that oil pan, and I'm surprised I don't have any leaks running it this way for a couple 100 miles. I do not recommend running your engine like this. If I lose oil pressure, I could not be paying attention and then just spin a bearing and ruin all that engine building that I just did. But I've inspected it, and this is good enough for now. What I will be doing is installing a double cardan rear shaft out of a Tacoma, which I had on my last Cummins swap landcruiser, and that was on like a 7-inch lift. And the reason I needed that is because of the angle coming off the transfer case down to the front pinion flange was too high. So I'm gonna do that both for the reason of this angle, even though I'm only on a 4-inch lift, and also because the pinion flange on those Toyotas and the overall just yoke is not the same diameter as the one I'm running now, so I shouldn't run into any contacting issues. If I do, I'm gonna have to lengthen my front panhard in order to bring this axle over and then try and not hit that oil pan anymore, because that is a big no-no. Another frustrating issue that I'm still facing is dealing with this speed sensor, and I just can't figure out what the issue is. I've got 12 volts to these wires, not the ground obviously. I've replaced the speed sensor. I've checked out all my ABS sensors and I still just can't get any reading into my tach. So super frustrating, but to be honest, with these 42-inch tires, it won't even read it properly. So I'm probably just gonna get a digital one. Here's a good shot of the driver's side birfield, and I have no leakage for now anyways. Unfortunately, I broke this bolt off on the top here. Thankfully, it was the top and not the bottom, but still no leakage out of there, which is good from the felts and wipers. Definitely putting the idea of going to 1 tons a lot sooner than later is in my mind after that trail. Might be kind of hard to tell, but I also did a little buff and wax in this recently, and this is about as clean as this thing's ever gonna get. We're going to be going off-road again, getting it nice and dirty, but a lot of the scratches that I got from the trail just kind of were erased, so I really like that. It rained a bit today out here in northern Idaho, and it got a lot of just beading falling off, which is what you want with wax, just to be able to protect your paint and have the water beads just fly off the truck. So I think it looks really good. It's kind of hard to see in the shadows right now, but I think it looks pretty good. And the interior is just a mess, ripping everything apart to try and figure out my wiring for that speed sensor. But I do have this little Dakota Digital. It is a box that sends a certain signal from your alternator into your dash. So I'm actually going to use this for my tachometer, and there's a section here on the back that reads tach. So you take your input voltage from your alternator, power and ground. I'll probably just take from like the radio or something, or tap a fuse, and then this should send the correct signal to my tachometer to get a reading from the Cummins. Because after doing this Cummins swap, I don't have a speed sensor and I don't have a tachometer. The speed sensor is probably unrelated, but the tachometer will take a reading off the crankshaft pulley at the bottom there, generally with this swap, with a part that powertrain integration or Dustin included. They don't make that sensor anymore, so I couldn't run it on this particular case. But what that Dakota Digital will be doing is taking a signal from the W wires on the back of the alternator. So I got to take this thing out and then fish a wire into the cab, and I should have a low voltage and a high voltage, which it'll read off of, and it'll give that signal into my dash so that I'll finally have a tachometer reading. And as far as the speed sensor goes, I've tried so many things and I feel like I'm getting close, but only time will tell. There's actually this thing on Etsy that retrofits an old Game Boy to use as your speedometer, and I actually kind of wanted to do that just for the nostalgia. I'm definitely not a fan of how these radius arm drop brackets look, but the number one concern after I installed them was how beefy they're going to be, how durable, and will they get constantly hung up on rocks. This is about the only scratch I see here. I have more scratches on my front diff. Almost got into my ring and pinion there, so if I'm going to keep this axle, I have to really consider armoring it, taking it off and just welding a truss and all sorts of diff bracing and armor to it. But like I said, running trails like that makes me really want to just start the 1-ton swap. Unfortunately, cost is a major issue, and as you can see here, I'm at my new job waiting for this thing to kind of open up and for business to get going as usual so I can afford these parts. And I'm still getting driveline vibrations at highway speed, so I'm assuming it's because I've used those lower adjustable control arms to move the axle back to fit the 42s, and it's removed this slip yoke from the drive shaft out further than it should be. I believe this is the way it goes from factory, but I've read that you want to have the slip yoke actually at the pinion. So do you guys have any experience with that? Can you comment down below what orientation yours is in? Also, whether it's in phase or out of phase versus the front axle? That would be helpful. I'm sure this scraping right here is the cause of some of the vibration as well, but what I may end up doing is using a 4Runner rear shaft double cardan section up here and then retubing it for a shorter length, and then you have to use this larger pattern on the end. So you're essentially cannibalizing this drive shaft with a 4Runner double cardan joint up here, and I'm just kind of throwing my like mystery dice at it and hopefully thinking that that'll fix it. I don't know. But I think I'm just going to do that because we're at about a 10 to 11 degree angle on there already. I could keep adjusting with my uppers to get my pinion angle right or wrong, but I'm gonna probably just get a new shaft because this one's out of balance, most likely from wrecking it. Another thing I'm curious about, I put a poll out on YouTube asking you guys what you thought. I had an opportunity to trade this Cummins swap landcruiser for a 93 Troopy, right-hand drive, 1HZ, so that's kind of a negative, I would say, because the 1HZ is super slow. Having no experience driven one, but having asked a lot of people, basically everyone said, just keep your Cummins swap landcruiser. The Troopies are cool, and they're definitely sought after here in the States because we never got them, but then I'd be throwing tons more money in it. And this thing's already cost me enough, and it's driving and it works. Of course, I can't read my speedometer or my tach, but who needs those? I also found this really cool 97 Safari Edition Patrol. It's right-hand drive, and it only has equivalent to, I think, 38,000 miles. I thought about trading it. I contacted the owner and he said he might be willing to. So is that something you guys would want to see? And furthermore, what are the values? I don't know how to value this thing. I've thought about selling it just so I can get into a house, and it would make filming these videos a lot easier. I know you guys are like, you sold the last one too, but I could definitely start on a new one as soon as I got into a house, and it would be much easier. That having been said, it's gonna be tough to let this thing go, so I'll probably keep it. A lot of you are probably wondering how I'm driving around with just a rear drive shaft in, and the answer is, I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. The reason is because if you turn your car on, you will see that the center differential is engaged. It's hard to see down there, but the center differential is engaged. So what that does is it locks the transfer case 50-50 to the rear and the front. That allows you to get enough torque and horsepower to one side of the axle. You could technically just keep the front shaft in and make this a front wheel drive vehicle if you wanted. But I did that to try and diagnose vibrations, and I'm still getting vibrations from the rear shaft. So I would say that that's probably the issue. Could also be tire balancing. So I'm probably gonna take these off and dismount them, get the balancing beads out of them, and then have a shop properly align these. It's just tough to try and find a shop that'll balance 42s, but I finally found one. So how do these actually drive in two-wheel drive? Essentially, it's part-time. I actually like the way it drives more than all-wheel drive. You have a lot lighter steering, there's a lot less stress on the front components, but unfortunately, these were engineered and designed to be all-wheel drive instead of part-time, so it's not really ideal the way it drives down the highway. It's a little loosey-goosey. Anyways, guys, front axle's in, everything's working. We should get our front drive shaft back this week. Hopefully we'll get into some wheeling in the next couple weeks. Thank you all for watching. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below, and we'll see you in the next one.